I'm just gonna. We're not getting one of those old school mics. Okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Alrighty. 8:13. We're not doing bad, but we can do better. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Is there a button in the back? Is that thing a joystick? Just hit it in. Okay, now go to the right. Yeah, turn the other one down, please. Yes. Go to your other right. One more? Yeah. Now hit it in again. Man, this is community right here, mashallah. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome back to Artwork. Hope everyone had a nice... Did you guys get a day off? Anyone get a day off? Friday? No, Monday? No, the teachers did, mashallah.
No, we didn't.
No? Wow, that's crazy. I thought, okay. I guess Easter. Not what it used to be. Do you guys feel like when we were younger, we used to get like everything off? And now there's nothing? Okay. Capitalism. Okay. Speaking of capitalism, miserliness. We're going to, inshallah, do this disease tonight. This disease is actually, subhanAllah, the one that he started with first. Imam Mawlud started with this one first, not because of any particular order, but because he organized it alphabetically. This is like a dictionary for the heart. So his poem was organized alphabetically, and so miserliness starts with a ba, bukhl. So he started it with that. But we're going to go back to it. We're coming back to it now a few weeks in. We covered hubb ad-dunya, love of this world, and it's intricately related. If you guys, if you recall, we talked about, I think in the first or second session, that diseases can be compounded upon one another. And so you can have a disease of the heart that's built off of an existing disease, right? There are some that are just there. They in and of themselves are like, you could say, independent diseases. And then there are some that, sort of compound. And then some of them, they just compound altogether. Some scholars say that arrogance is like the source of all of it. Some say that envy is the source of all of it. But anyways, that's just for us to know. So this is going to have a lot of similarities. The reason why it's important to know is because this is going to have a lot of similarities to hubb ad-dunya, in that love of this world is one of the reasons why people are miserly, right? It's one of the reasons that causes us to be miserly in our dealings with, and we'll talk about, with each other and with God. Okay, so there's two categories that he's going to sort of highlight for us, and Imam al-Ghazali, he kind of further elucidates the two categories a little bit. We're going to read, inshallah. Who wants to read? Can you all see? Do you like how that's how I respond to no one raising their hand? I'm like, oh, they must not be able to see it. Because they're tired. Who wants to read? Yeah, awesome. Okay, good, mashallah.
Miserliness. Now then, the refusal to give what is obliged according to the sacred law or virtuous moderate.
All right, very good.
Is the essence of miserliness.
Okay, good. Pause. So remember, this is the poem. So he's saying now, the refusal to give what is obliged according to sacred law. What's that? When something's obliged, what does that mean? Yeah, something's obligated on you. So what's something that's obliged that we have to give according to our sacred law?
Zakat.
Very good. Zakat, right? So zakat is something that we have to give according to sacred law. Now, there are some other things that we have to do according to our sacred law that cost money. Okay, so not everything costs money. But not just money, but it might cost you time. Okay? Hajj is one of those things. Salah is actually something that costs us time. Right? Like we exchange time for those moments. Okay? Ramadan, we exchange, hunger. We give Allah our hunger, and the reward was sawmu li wa ana ajzi bi, he says. And fasting is for me, and I will reward accordingly. It's actually one of the most powerful hadith about fasting. He says everything the Prophet ﷺ is narrating from Allah Ta'ala, he's describing how everything has like a numerical reward. So salah is this, and zakat is this, and this is this. And then Allah comes to fasting, he says, and as sawm, fasting, that's for me, and I'm going to reward according to it. So fasting is like one of the highest levels of reward, some of the scholars say, based on that hadith. Okay? So he's saying that the refusal to give is actually the definition of when a person is miserly. Okay, so we think like, when we think of someone who's miserly or stingy, what's the image that pops up in our head? Huh? Oh, I missed that generation. I'm a little bit older. Who's Mr. Krabs? Who? Oh, okay. Yeah, listen. I was just in Baltimore. I think there was a restaurant called Mr. Krabs. Huh? Ebenezer Scrooge. That's where I'm coming from, right? Anyone remember Ebenezer Scrooge? It was Christmas morning. We got nothing to do. No tree at our house, right? So it's just like, all right, we're going to watch TV. Oh, this is on again. So Ebenezer Scrooge or Mr. Krabs? Apparent Krabs? You guys not see the... I feel uncomfortable saying that because there was like such an uncomfortable innuendo there. Okay, so I'm just like, Mr. Crustacean? So the idea is we all have this image in our mind. Now, we were all very kind in that we went straight to fiction. Right? So we have fictional characters that we think of. But just like with every disease of the heart, when we're presented with the definition, part of the nefsical response to that is to start thinking about what? Like other people in our lives that we can peg as being, oh, this person's envious, or this person eats a lot, or this person backbites, or this person this. So maybe in our heads we're thinking of like a certain, person, or like a demographic, or like a category of people. Again, there's no benefit in that. The only benefit from these sessions is to think about who? Be selfish tonight. Or we're thinking about ourselves. Okay? So miserliness, he says, is the refusal for a person to give according to sacred law, or to virtuous merit. So something that's required, something that's not required. Continue. Which
is mentioned among the diseases of the heart.
Very good. Go ahead.
As for obligations of sacred law, there are such things as zakat, supporting one's dependents' rights due to others, and relieving the distressed. Examples of virtuous merit include not nitpicking over trivialities. This Sheikh Hamza language. I love it. Okay. So the first section he talks about are things that are an obligation upon you, like zakat, supporting your family, or dependents that you have, rights due to other people. So for example, if someone loans you money, then they have a right upon you, right? So that's another thing. And if I don't want to pay that back, then that's an example of someone being miserly. And relieving the distress. Very interesting. This is actually something that's pretty much built into the code of Islamic theology, actually, from a deep level. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, it's technically law, but it's part of the Prophet ﷺ's character. And the Prophet is such a pillar of theology, then it's easy for us to make that connection. Relieving the distress is something that has to come from us easily, right? It's not something that we should have to convince ourselves to do, or something that we should have to force ourselves to do. But thinking about anyone who's distressed, whether it's someone who's distressed financially, maybe it's emotionally, giving your time, lending your ear, right? I'm asking all of you to forgive me for that. I'm not that good at that yet. And spending time listening to people, being with people, that's an example of giving people relief from their distresses, okay? It's one of the descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ that his wife Khadija gave him, right? وَتَكْسِبِ الْمَعْدُومَ وَتَحْمِلُ الْكَلْبِ. She said that it's a beautiful description. She said you basically remember all the invisible people. Everyone who people think are invisible, you see them, right? So it's beautiful. Examples of virtuous merit, including not nitpicking over trivialities. What does that look like in our day and age? In the corporate world, young professional world, young couples, young families, young single people, young everybody. What's nitpicking? What's it like to be a nitpicker?
A hater.
A hater, okay. In what regard? Give me an example, Kiara. It's going to be good. Everyone listen.
I'm not familiar with hating.
Okay, mashallah. From what you heard. You read on the internet somewhere.
In the event that I was a hater, I could hate on many of things. People, places, people that know people that go places. There's honestly a lot.
So how define nitpicking within the umbrella of hating?
So, I think what differentiates nitpicking from hating is nitpicking is when, in my mind, there might actually be valid cause for concern there, but you're over exaggerating or overemphasizing the concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a friend actually one time who was really, really, man, we always have a bug. Omar, you're going to have to do your thing. Okay, inshallah. Everyone pray Janazah for that bug. It's about to die. I had a friend actually one time who, and this is something that I think the Muslim community, we're really good at this, and that is haggling.
right? And I had a friend who would haggle, I told you about the friend who haggles overseas, but I had a friend who would haggle with like his cell phone company, and he would call every month, and he would basically be like, yeah, I had like 3 dropped calls this month, like what are y'all going to do about that? Right? And like, I'm not saying he's a miser, but what I'm saying is like, that kind of, he was doing it because he was just in college and he's like, yo bro, that's like Chipotle, like he was trying to, but that, when that comes from like a deeply like essential part of you or me, that I'm so obsessed and just consumed with these sort of, okay, now no one's going to be able to listen. Let's see who can kill it. When I'm so obsessed or consumed with, do we get it? They tell nightmares about being a shark in the mosquito world, or whatever that was. Okay, so when a person becomes consumed with it, here's an example that all of us probably at some point have either been a part of or seen or been the person, is like at a restaurant, right? Like when someone brings out something, maybe there's like the garnish is too close, or like the food. I've actually seen people who they don't like their food touching, even though it's all gonna touch at some point, but they don't like their food touching, things like that, and they'll actually send it back, right? Now, this is actually something that we might be like, well, it's just a personality trait, this and that, but this is actually brings up a good discussion, which is that sometimes personality traits are inherent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're virtuous, right? I like to sleep. Sleeping is inherent, right? But sleeping through feathers is not virtuous, right? So not everything that's natural is virtuous. Okay, so if I find it to be part of my personality to get obsessed with small things to the point where it creates a spiritual dysfunctionality within me, and it really bothers people, and it feels almost like it's oppressing people, then I have to be careful with that. Okay, another example he's going to bring up is like having guests. When you host guests, and those guests might put a cup in the wrong place, or put a spoon back in the wrong place, or whatever, or they might, their kid might spill grape juice on your carpet. Right? So he actually addresses that. He talks about that. So that's the example of nitpicking. Okay, avoiding?
Avoiding this is even more important with respect to a neighbor, a relative, or a wealthy person.
Mm-hmm.
Or when hosting guests or concerning something in which such behavior is inappropriate, such as purchasing a burial shroud, or sacrificing an animal, or purchasing something you intend to donate to the needy.
Those are 3 separate categories we're going to talk about. So purchasing a burial shroud, purchasing an animal to be sacrificed, or purchasing something you intend to donate. Go ahead, continue.
Thus, one who makes matter difficult for those whose rights clearly render this inappropriate to do so, such as the neighbor has indeed torn away the veils of dignity. This is as the majestic and guiding sages have stated. This is comparable to one who fulfills his obligation without good cheer or spends from the least of what he possesses.
Remember this description. Someone who fulfills their obligations without good cheer, or who spends from the least of what they possess. These are all signs. Okay? Go ahead.
Its root is love for this world for its own sake, or so that self can acquire some of its fleeting pleasures. Okay, very good. So Imam Mawlud now brings to the foreground, Sheikh Hamza's commenting. I'm going to read just a little bit because I know where we want to break and where we want to keep going. Good job, mashallah. Good job. How old are you, by the way? 11, okay, take that, everybody. Alright, so Imam Mawlud brings to the foreground the definition of these diseases. She's here with her dad, by the way, she didn't walk. Their etiology, he says, and how to cure them. The first disease he speaks of is Miserliness. This is the intro to the whole book. It is not first because it's the worst characteristic, but because the alphabet in Arabic. He mentions 2 aspects. One relates to Sharia, meaning what we have to fulfill, and one due to God and His creation. The other pertains to muru'ah, which is an important Arabic concept that kind of connotes manliness or valor, and he kind of goes on and says basically it talks about humanity, right? So even though virtue shares the root that means man, scholars talk about it as being part of humanity, okay? Regarding the first aspect, the sacred law obliges the payment of zakat, charity distributed to the needy. Miserliness in the form of not giving zakat is explicitly forbidden. We talked about this before. Why is this so tragic?
not to pay your zakat. Why is it like such an egregious thing? Or we talked about how Abu Bakr Siddiq would wage war upon the tribes that would not pay zakat, but he would be okay with like if they didn't pray or if they didn't fast. He's like, we'll work on it. Why was that a big deal? Yeah, Sam? Yeah, it's like a social ibadah, right? So if you don't pray, I mean, technically, if you don't do ibadah, it does affect everybody. We can talk about that, but not as directly as a person withholding zakat, right? Not as directly as a person withholding zakat. And so withholding zakat is like you're actually starving that child that needs that food, or you're withholding the rent from that father or mother that needs your help. And that's just that's like the lowest of the low that a person can stoop to. Okay. Miserliness in the form of non-committing zakat explicitly forbidden. The same is true with one's obligations to support their wife and children. This is interesting. Islam actually obligates child support from the traditional text before it was obviously written into law in the Western world. Islam actually says that, and the statute on this is debated among scholars, but Islam actually says that for the father of the child, even if the couple gets divorced, that the breadwinner, right, in most cases in that time would be the father, would have to take care of the entire family and the children. There was no concept of like cutting and running, right? And it wasn't there. And people would actually, subhanAllah, there used to be like these groups and these societies, and people would actually, in communities, if someone was known to have divorced their spouse, their wife, and not pay for the child support, they would basically sanction that person and no one would do business with them. And so they would like suffocate that person financially. It was really serious, right? And so this is something that he says is part of the obligation as well. When it comes to the sacred law, miserliness is the most toxic thing. Being stingy is the most toxic thing. In terms of valor, he says he goes into detail. When it comes to debt, it is far better from the creditor to be flexible and magnanimous than demanding and unbearable. What does that mean? How should the creditor be? Who here has ever been a creditor before? What does that mean when I say creditor, Faisal? He's an accountant, so he's like, oh, I got this.
You're the person that people owe money to.
Yeah, so have you guys ever loaned someone money before?
Yeah.
Okay, now everyone's like, oh yeah, I've done that. Okay? You ever like spotted someone for lunch or something? Okay, then what is he saying here? What would be a miserly person who loans someone money in this scenario? Yeah?
You're asking them every week, hey, where's my money? Kind of thing.
Every week? Every day, yeah. It actually also, so the scholars do say that it depends on the amount, it depends on sort of like the severity of it, right? And it also depends sometimes, but even then there's ways to do it in which don't come off as miserly, right? But you're frequently pinging that person. You know, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do? And in fact, Islam would say the best option is to do what? If you can. Just forgive it, right? So you spotted someone for a lunch or something and they don't remember, right? They conveniently forgot. The best thing in Islam would be not to bring it up. Because what is the highest priority in the Islamic tradition is the relation, after your relationship with Allah, is your relationship with each other. And if you have to ask yourself, like, is my relationship with this person worth $6? Some people it is, right? No, astaghfirullah. But hopefully it's not. That was a joke. Okay, all of you are, mashallah, much more than that, right? But you have to ask yourself, is it worth causing that sort of, that chaos, right? The rockiness between us just by asking this. So he says, it's actually very important. The Islamic tradition says that if you're a creditor, you should be magnanimous and flexible. Now let me ask you a question. If you loan someone money, do you not have the right to demand it back? In Islam, do you? Absolutely you do. So why is Imam Mawlud and Sheikh Hamza now who's commenting, why are they saying, dude, be chill, be flexible? Why are they saying that? Even though it's technically, you're right.
There's different approaches to things.
Okay, what do you mean, Reed?
There's one thing of going after someone right and left, asking them for something, and then there's one where it's like, I mean, I don't know, the respectful, I guess, way to think about it is like $10 versus like $50, or like 50 versus 100. They're like, hey, once a month, if that. But then there's some people that genuinely can't pay it back, and sometimes you have to look the other side, but it is how you present it.
Yeah. So why is he saying it's better to be generous in this scenario than it is to kind of like flex your right? Because technically it's not sinful. Technically, if you go to the person every day or every week or whatever, it's technically not sinful.
Because you're showing more importance to the money than to, I guess, human beings.
Okay, that's one reason. Absolutely very good. Which means what? Yeah?
Just maintaining their words.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
show mercy so God can show mercy on you.
Okay, so that's one principle that we know. Like the way that we treat other people on this earth, there's numerous ahadith that tell us that the way we treat people is the way God's going to treat us. There's almost like a reciprocal relationship. Whoever is grateful to people is grateful to God. And one reading of that hadith, whoever is gracious to people, God will be gracious to them. Right? Man la yarham, la yurham. Whoever is not merciful will not have mercy upon them. Right? This is a hadith. So all these hadith teach us that the way that you treat people, whoever hides the sin of their brother or sister, God will hide their sin. Right? So there's all these like little reciprocal hadith that we learn. So it's safe for us to say that if you forgive the debt of somebody, what's God going to do for you? On the day of judgment. You see where the priority is? Like what's more important? $10 here or like 10 major issues on the day of judgment? I'll take day of judgment every day of the week, right? Sorry. So here there's kind of like, you're now getting a taste into the scholastic, how they process things. Yeah,
I think one day you could be the one giving the money. Tomorrow you could be the one needing the money. So don't put that in the back of your head.
Yeah. The thing about community that's important is that you have to realize that sometimes positions flip. Right? Sometimes positions flip where you actually are the person who might need help. And that's another thing actually as well that we learned from zakat is that there are scenarios and many people, probably even in this room. I mean, I can be very honest with you. There was a time my family was paying zakat, and there was a time my family was receiving zakat. Right? My dad got laid off. And then alhamdulillah paying zakat again. So there's all these times where you flip and it's almost like there doesn't need to be this formality about it, right? There's something else that we learn in general though about taking the higher road in the Islamic tradition, even though you have the right. Think of like your relationship with Allah. What's the bare minimum that you can do with your relationship with Allah, or that we should do? What's the bare minimum? Right now. Sorry.
Believe in the oneness of God.
Okay, so believe in God, oneness. What else? There's 4 more. There we go. Okay. Pray, fast, zakat, and it's 5 pillars. That's the bare minimum. Literally, there was a Bedouin man, and the Bedouins were like from let's see, I don't want to offend anybody because everyone's from somewhere. Wakanda. No, not from there. The Bedouins were from forever. The Bedouins were from. Anyone remember Arkansas? Anyone here from Arkansas? Are you? Dang it. Anyone from Oklahoma? South Dakota. Okay, no one from South Dakota. All right, so the super Bedouins, right? They were like really rough people, like really rough. They were good, but they were just rough. You know, you meet someone who's like, I was at Kincaid's Burgers because it's Creekstone. All right, watch your back. So y'all looking? Right. And I was there on my thobe, and I just came from a dars on Tuesday, and I was picking up dinner for my family, and I was there, and this guy comes up to me, and I always love when I'm wearing like religious garb because people always look at my skin color and they're like, wait, what kind of like hippie movement is this guy on? So the guy comes up to me, he's like, and literally the words out of his mouth are like, what kind of costume is that? And I was like, Prophet Sallallahu So he was like, what kind of costume is that? And I was like, oh, it's actually, traditional Eastern clothing, and it's something. I'm like a religious worker in the Muslim community, and so it's just something that I wear. It's really comfortable, ha ha ha, right? I was really tired. So, but he was very much like, he was very direct. All right, that's what I'm trying to get across. And that was in South Lake. South Lake's pretty, west. Just until recently, well, it's bougie now, but I would say like 20 years ago, it was probably like Bedouin land. So, he basically had this very direct approach. So the Bedouins, when they come to the Prophet, they had a very similar approach. Would walk literally up to a gathering, Ayyukum Muhammad. Right? Ayyuminkum Muhammad. Like, which one from you is Muhammad? And no one called the Prophet by his name. Right? One person just said that, and he would be, and by the way, that hadith is beautiful because you couldn't tell who the Prophet was in the gathering that he's sitting in. Right? May Allah forgive me. You couldn't tell who the teacher was. He was sitting with his friends. And so, this is more for functional purposes, may Allah forgive me. And so, the Bedouin came up to the Prophet and said, what do I have to do to go to Jannah? And the Prophet said, and he gave him the 5 pillars. He said, you got to believe in God, you got to pray. How many times I got to pray? 5 times. You got to give zakat. How much? 2.5% of your annual savings. You got to fast. How many days? 30 or 29, right? Hajj once in your life. And the man goes, do I have to do anything else? Like, he's literally like, you know that guy who's like buying it without the warranty, right? And he's like, do I have to do anything else? And the Prophet was like, no. Now the companions who pray Qiyam every night, who give, you have Abu Bakr there who's given all his wealth in charity, and you have a guy who's like 2.5%. Abu Bakr just, like, oh my God. You got Omar giving half his wealth. You got a man who's just like an angel investor to the Muslim Ummah, right? He's just like literally funding. And they're all sitting there. And literally the hadith describes them, they're like stunned. This guy has the audacity to come to the Prophet ﷺ and be like, how can I be the one that just barely gets in, right? C- for Jannah, right? And the Prophet ﷺ tells him, yeah, this is all you have to do. You know what he says? Dude, that's where you just walk away. That's where you're like, okay, thank you for your time, O Messenger of God. Please pray for me. Thank you, right? I clearly need it. Like one of those things. So you know what he says? He goes, I'm going to do this. He goes, I swear by God, I'm going to do this, i.e. what you told me, and nothing more. And the companions were just like, fuck. Like, the courage you must have to say it to the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ smiles and says, if you do it, you'll go to paradise. So he leaves, and the commander's like, Ya Rasulullah, what is this, like, discount Jannah plan? Right? Like, what is this discount Jannah plan that this guy's on? And, like, why? Like, kind of like they're asking, like, and then you got him. So they're kind of comparing. And the Prophet ﷺ says, if he does it. He says, if he does it. No, the eloquence of the Prophet ﷺ. If he does it. Meaning, and one of the commentaries in this hadith, very beautiful, everything you do that is extra, beyond what you have to do, protects you from missing what you have to do. But if you're only doing the bare minimum of what you have to do, then you are at risk from transgressing what you have to do. It's like having a fence for your yard. Right? If you have a fence for your yard, what do people do when they want extra protection for their home? They add barriers. Right? They add barriers. So the first one obviously is the door. That's the bare minimum. You should have a door for your house. Right? Then some people, they get a yard and they build a fence. Then some people add a security system. Some people add a dog. Some people add cameras. They add layers. Why? Because what are they trying to protect? The door. Right? The entry point that we all have. So when it comes to being extra, and I'm not saying this in like our way now, but like I'm saying in the good way. When it comes to being magnanimous, the reason why they're recommending is because they want us, the scholars who are writing this poem and translating it and commenting on it, they want us to get used to not doing the bare minimum. The personality of a believer is not comfortable doing the bare minimum. The bare minimum is only done regretfully. Whenever something cannot be done. Right? It's like, I have to pray. That's why the hadith say that one of the signs of the hypocrite is a person who waits till the very end for prayer. Like buzzer beater. Right? Like last, like fourth quarter, 8 seconds left. Awesome. Right? Like, one of the signs of the hypocrite. Why? Because that person didn't care enough to actually do it on time. Now, if a person prays their sunnah, what do you think? Do you think they're ever going to miss their salah? If a person never misses a sunnah, you think they're going to miss their fard? Nah. Right? If a person fasts outside of Ramadan, you think they're going to miss Ramadan? If a person gives extra sadaqah regularly, you think they're going to miss zakat? You guys see where I'm going with this? The extra things that we do, they're not some sort of punishment. They're not some sort of like burden or weight on our shoulders. It's meant to be a way to make sure that the core is always solid. That the core is always there. So he says, look, you have the right to demand your money back. You absolutely do. But do you really want to be that person that lives life by rights? You want to walk up to your people and be like, this is my right. Right? You go to your mom, you're like, it's my right. Right? Like, if I said my mom's like, what does that mean, right? Like, that's the way some people live. And by the way, for marriages, I know we have a young professional crowd here, and people who are either married or getting married or want to get married, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give everyone who wants to get married great marriages. Ameen. Anyone who's married, may Allah give you great marriages. Say Ameen. Beautiful spouse, awesome spouse, say Ameen. And no marital counseling, inshallah, from Brother Murphy. Ameen. Because you guys are going to have some great marriages, right? So, okay. So, imagine having a relationship like a marriage where it's like, you're demanding it based on rights. And by the way, this is not something you have to imagine. Maybe some of us grew up in homes like that, where our parents were talking about rights. One of the greatest confusions we have at conference, I just came back from ICNA yesterday from Baltimore. Conferences are unfortunately like the hive for me to get an understanding of what the problems are in our community. And one of the greatest problems we have in our families is that people are demanding their relationships. There's no generosity anymore. Parents are demanding from their children. Spouses are demanding from each other. Kids are demanding from their parents. There's no generosity between people anymore. And they're losing it, right? Even at work, do y'all walk around with a contract in your hand, like your signed contract, and whenever your manager's like, hey, for those of you especially who are in like the service industry, like, hey, we got one more patient. Are you like, listen, it says right here. What are they going to do to you tomorrow? They're going to find someone else. Because relationships that operate on rights don't last. Right? Generosity is the oxygen for relationships. Okay? It needs to breathe a little bit. So he says this is especially true when the creditor is not in need of repayment. It's almost like more insulting if the creditor is just like, pay me back, where's my money? And the person's like, I'll get it to you, do you need it? And the creditor's like, no, I'm good. Where's my money? Right? Like, that kind. No, and really, like, we're sort of making it like a caricature, but be real. Like, we have to think about it sometimes. When we're pushing someone and we know this. And by the way, being in debt is not a comfortable feeling. So people who are in debt don't want to be there usually. Right? Now, some of us have gotten accustomed to it. May Allah, restore our calibration. Right? No, seriously, because of the financing and everything. So we're just like, well, I'm paying Best Buy for 60 months. Why can't I pay, Mahfouz for 60 months? But that's not something that people like. Especially because every time you see that person, what's it like? And then they see you spending money, they're like, mashallah. Just kind of like move their mouth with it. So when you're not in need of it, don't demand it because you're bringing up to that person, again, you're tormenting the relationship. And you're not even in need of it. Now, if you are in need of it, like Arid said, there are some people who can't repay it, but there's also some people who need it. Like they need it back. If that's the case, there's a beautiful way to do it. Right? There's a beautiful way to do it. It usually involves person-to-person contact. It usually involves sweet words. It usually involves a lot of regret, remorse. I'm so sorry. I know that I loaned it to you, and I know that we kind of had an agreement, and I apologize, but is there any way that we can set up a timetable to get it back? Right? That is still preserving the dignity of that person, the honor of that person. Okay? So having this quality of magnanimity is not an obligation, he says, because the creditor has the right to what's owed to them, but if they're apathetic to the needs of the debtor and insist on payment, this is considered reprehensible. Okay? And then he says that an Islamic ethic for the wealthy is that they exude generosity. That if a person's wealthy, it's almost like there is an added circumstance upon them that they have to be generous. Like it's almost like this is what's expected Islamically from a wealthy person. Right? If Allah gave somebody something, then Allah is expecting that person to be generous. Right? To be generous. And he tells a story. Who can read the story for us? A hadith. I want you guys to read this for us nicely. Anyone want to read it? Right there. Yeah.
A hadith recounts that a wealthy individual would instruct his servants when collecting money on his behalf. If the debtors do not have the means, tell them their debts are absolved.
So what did the person say? There's a wealthy person. He tells all of his workers what? Go collect my debts, but what? If they don't have it, forgive them. Make it easy on them. Show up to their door. If you see them shaking, if you see them nervous, if you see them peeking through the blinders, right? Then just tell them, hey, give me 2 minutes. Person comes and say, do you have it? No? If you don't have it, don't say a word. It's taken care of. Like, what kind of relief would you feel if someone did that to you? Right? Anyone here have student loans?
Sally Mae.
Yeah, Sally Mae, right? Everyone's favorite auntie, right? Okay. Those are too young to get it. You don't get it, right? Okay. Could you imagine student loans? Could you imagine getting a letter tomorrow? Dear Samir, dear Dr. Samir, right? Your loans have been forgiven. Please pray for us, right? The team at Sally Mae, right? Like, that kind. Can you imagine? What would you do? What would you do, Samir? Honestly, I don't know if you have student loans left, but what would you do if you did? You definitely do. You go, yeah, I do. Would you make hundreds that year?
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, at that point you're obligated, right? You would just be probably beside yourself. And everybody, it doesn't matter how much debt you owe, whether it's 100, 1,000, 10,000, 300,000, whatever you owe. Like, imagine people who bought a house. Anyone bought a house recently? And get a letter, right? May Allah fill your house with blessings, inshallah. Say, I mean, get a letter from the lending company. Hey, congratulations on your new home. It's paid off, right? Doesn't happen, but, we can all dream, right? Make dua, inshallah. Okay? Sufyan's like, yeah, Gerber sent me that letter. No, I'm kidding, not Gerber. He's eating good, mashallah. Okay, so he said, if they don't have the means, then tell them it's forgiven. When this wealthy person died without ever having any good deeds, didn't pray a single prayer, didn't fast a single day, didn't make hajj, did nothing. All he did was get rich, lend out money, and then forgive. What happens? According to the hadith, God says to his angels, read, continue.
This man was forgiven of people's transgressions against him.
Allah Ta'ala is talking to the angels now. So this person, they look at the scrolls and they see what? They look at the book and they see nothing on the good side. Like nothing. Can you imagine? The angel over here is like, what is going on? Right? Like, come on, give me something. And the person's just like, nope. Right? So the left book is heavy, the right book is very light. But Allah Ta'ala says this person forgave people's transgressions against him. Go ahead.
And I'm more worthy of forgiving transgressions. Therefore, I forgive him.
But no one's better at forgiving than me. Like, he forgave, and everyone's impressed. But he said, no one's better than forgiving than me. I'm God. So let me forgive him. Let me show people what forgiveness looks like. Right? SubhanAllah. May Allah forgive us. Even if we have nothing, may Allah forgive us. Amazing. Those kind of hadith, man, don't read too many. You might get a little bit... You're like, I'm good, right? I got nothing, right? I eat the deal, I'm upset, you can read this hadith, it's good, targhib or tarheeb, like you need both, you need the ones about hell and the ones about Jannah, and then you inshallah end up in Jannah. Okay, so when hosting guests, he says, one should not, Shaykh Hamza word, alert, one should not be persnickety, okay? Speaking of evidence, you're screwed, I think it's the only other time I've heard that. Says Imam Mawlud, for example, if a guest spills something on the carpet, check this out. The host should not display anger. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. Should not display anger. Okay? The person should even fake. They should fake like it's not a big deal. One of a kind rug. Right? One of a kind rug. Or even better than one of a kind. Like, there's people love expensive stuff, but you know what we really love? We love a good deal. So it could be like that one-of-a-kind rug that was passed down, that like your parents bought, and it was like more than your car, or it's the one that was on like 85% clearance, and you were like, got it for like under $13, and it was originally $100, and you're just like, what? And then someone comes and you're like, Mama, I love meatballs, and then meatballs in your carpet, right? He's saying you shouldn't even, if you want to be truly a generous person, you shouldn't even show it. In fact, what you do is you try to act like it's totally cool. And as a parent, I'll tell you, no worse feeling ever than having to live through the shame of ruining something at someone's house. Not you, but your kid. Right? Musa is already practicing to be a linebacker on people's vases. Right? Baba, I tackled it. It's like, yeah, Musa, thank you. Right? So, if you can show generosity towards that person, then kind of like what Ahad said, kind of like what people say, about, the hadith teaches us, there will come a time when you're in that position, when you're in that situation. I remember times when people would come to my house with their children, the children would destroy stuff. There was once a friend of mine who brought his kid over, and he thought he would pretend like he was one of those MAC makeup reps with his mom's lipstick on my wall. Right? And I remember I actually had just finished reading this text with Shaykh Al-Nasr for the first time. This was like 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And I just finished reading this, and we started with this chapter, obviously. We were like, far into it. We were probably just about done with it. And I remember seeing it, and I was like, and I went into the room, and I was just like, the perspective, like the angry, you're like, why? You leave the room, you're just like, it's all good. Don't even worry about it, right? And I actually took the lipstick, and I even marked it myself. I was like, whatever, right? And then I went, and I got the extra can of paint, and I painted over it in front of the parents. Why? Because part of what that means to be generous is like you want to also relieve the pain that person's feeling. Islam is all about preserving dignity within people. That's why the section we're going to talk about next, charity, we'll talk about something very powerful there, okay? So don't scold the guest. It's far better to show valor, be humane in making one's guests feel no consternation at all. The Imam also explains that when one buys a funeral shroud, this is deep, there should be no haggling over the cost. None. At the same time, the person selling it shouldn't be like, I'm good, right? There should be a mutual understanding that this is a serious transaction. This isn't like buying mangoes, right? You're not making guac with avocado, trying to, sorry, I didn't mean to look at you, Victor. Like, made eye contact when I said avocado, and he was like, give me those eyebrows, right? Mashallah. It's not that you're shopping for yourself. You're shopping because this is your vehicle to the afterlife. This shroud. So the last thing that should be on your mind is what? A discount. Right? The last thing that should be on your mind is a discount. Plus, what are you going to do? Like, tell people, like, hey, yeah, check how much I got my burial shroud for. Like, oh my God, great deal, right? Like, for a funeral shroud to be a reminder of death and the worldly matter of haggling over prices should not be involved in its attainment. Also, one should not haggle over prices when buying livestock to give meat to the needy. The same principle applies for purchasing goods. A lot of you may have, for charity, a lot of people may have heard me say this before, I'm going to say it again. We have to really turn our charity around in the community from being like spring cleaning dumps. We have to really do that. I actually know charity drive organizers that have now refused to take in-kind donations because they don't trust that people are actually going to do it properly. So all they do is collect cash. Because they say, we'll buy the new stuff. If we can't trust you guys to go out to Walmart or to go to Target or go wherever and buy a pack of socks for the needy and buy some food, some canned goods, but just give like the dented stuff that you got in your, the expired stuff from your kitchen, they're like, please don't give anything at all. Just give us cash. We'll go buy it, right? The whole idea is to save time, community, come together, but please spare us, right? So this is part of it as well, that when it comes to charity, we don't haggle. We don't debate, we don't argue, right, with the person that we're buying from. We understand that this is for us, this is for ourselves. Yeah, Kiara?
What about using your greediness for good? So I have a PTA mom at my school, and she's like an extreme couponer. But that's like 90% of the way that we get Lysol wipes and pencils.
Yeah.
Is because of her greed.
Yeah.
And I know that it's like a common practice with a lot of churches too. Is that...
Yeah. That's structural, so it's fine. Okay. It's coupons. This would be more like going and being like, okay, I'm buying this. Or going to the store and looking for like the dented cans for the needy because you're like, I'm going to get half off. Right? Or like, okay, let's go buy food for the needy. Let's go to that Kroger. You know that one rack at Kroger? About to expire rack? Y'all, everyone's lying right now. You all live there. We live there. And if you don't know, then I feel sorry for you, right? It's like apples that have 13 seconds left to eat them. Like when you buy it, you're just like, okay, quick, check me out. Right? Otherwise it turns into alcohol. Okay, so that, like, it's like when I'm going shopping for charity, I only go there. Or, yeah, let me go buy some gifts for people. Clearance rack. The beautiful... that last is a little bit too implicated. Okay, so the way that a believer works is that we love for people what we love for ourselves. Right? That you don't believe, you will not, Allah says in the Quran, that you will not attain piety until you give from that which you love. Homework assignment for everybody. You know what's coming. Go to your closet. Find something that you really like. Find 3 things that you like. Pick one. Wash it well. Laundry, fabric softener. Fold it nicely. Tie it up in a nice ribbon. Put some like, some nice perfume or ether on it or something. Put it in a nice bag and go and donate it. See what this does, right? And we'll talk. I think, raise your hand, Imam.
I did exactly that recently when I moved to my new house.
MashaAllah.
I ended up getting a new car for it.
Oh, wow. Well, you got a new car for it?
Yeah.
So,
that's what I believe on it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I was like, what dealer is like, bring us your nicest sweater and walk off the lot with a new car? No, you know what? That's beautiful though, because subhanAllah, we oftentimes do the opposite. When I do something wrong, Allah's punishing you. You see what He did? I did something good and Allah rewarded me. That's how we think of Allah. Like, we don't think of the punishment. We're not like, oh, this is punishment from Allah. No, it's a test. It's just a test. Everyone has tests. But you're able to understand. You're like, yeah, I gave some stuff away and Allah gave me a new car. Wow. What a bargain, right? And this is what the hadith means when it says, مَا نَقَصَ مِن مَالِ الصَّدَقَةِ. That charity will never decrease from your wealth. Ever. Ever. Wallahi, 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 ever. You give a little bit of charity, you will find that Allah will either give it back or He will withhold something that would have cost you money. Right? That's another way that Allah provides the risk. Sometimes it's not giving, sometimes it's withholding. Okay? So he says, it's equally regrettable when a person does their obligation without good cheer. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she used to put perfume on her charity. Right? She used to put perfume on her charity. This is an example of when somebody, like she would have like her coins, her gold coins, and she would like put some stuff on it and she would give it. Why? Because that's a sign of like being in love with what you're doing as you're doing it. I'm going to make sure it's ornamented, right? It smells nice. Okay? When paying charity, for example, one should smile and be humble, allowing the hand of the needy person to be above the giver's hand. Okay? This hadith is, I'm not going to take too much time on it because I know that, we're at 2 minutes left. I'm not going to take too much time, but the hadith is that you give somebody, because the Prophet ﷺ said, الْيَدِ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِنْ الْيَدِ السُّفْلَى, that the hand that's above is better than the hand that's below. Some people interpret this hadith, and this is a very interesting interpretation, may Allah accept, but it's interesting, that the person who gives is better than the person who receives. This is like one of those tough situations where it's like, well, how do I really know that? Right? Sure, giving is a good deed, but can I some scholars argue, they say, can I make a categorical statement about someone's betterness because they gave, and someone who's in need because they received? Like, this is how scholars think, by the way. They're like, let's really try to think about that commentary. So one of the scholars, Shawli al-Dahlawi, rahimahullah, from India, from Delhi, he said, actually no. He said, I think it's different. I think that what it is that you should put the person who's receiving, put their hand on top. And you give it to them like this. Because the hand on top is better than the hand that's below. So when you come to a person who's in need, it's not only money that they're asking for, they're asking for you to restore some of their dignity. Because when a person's desperate and they're begging and they're in need, look at their eyes. And don't look at their eyes, be like, right? Observe them. It's not just money that they're missing. There's a piece of them. Right? And this is the reason why you're not in their place has nothing to do with you. Zero. Allah simply just decided that you wouldn't be there. Maybe you can't handle it. Right? كَادَ الْفَقْرُ أَن يَكُونُ كُفْرًا. The hadith says that sometimes poverty can make a person disbelieve in God. Maybe if Allah tested us there, we would not believe in God. Right? So He didn't put us there because we're weak. But those people are strong. So the hadith, Shawli al-Dahlawi says, when you give something to somebody, and they go like this, that's the sign of being in need. He says, no, take their hand, put it on top, and you are in need of them taking your charity, otherwise your charity means nothing. If you walk up to somebody and say, here you go, and they're like, no thanks, what good is your sadaqah then? It's not there. So give them honor along with finances. Give them honor along with food or whatever you're giving. Okay? So let's talk a little bit now about some of the cures for this. Number one, the treatment for miserliness. A person who's miserly is someone who can't do any of these things, and they feel pain, right? The other kind of miserliness, by the way, we talked about money here, but the other kind of miserliness is with time. And miserliness with time can be with Allah, like rushing through prayer, right? Which I know a lot of us sometimes are guilty of, right? Think of how a stingy person would do that. That the same God that gave me the job that I'm at, I am quickly rushing through my prayers so that I can go back to making money that's from God. It's just, it's when you break it down logically, it seems a little bit problematic. The same God that gave me health to even pray in the first place, I'm not praying. I'm withholding my prayer from God. That's stinginess. I'm stingy if I do that. Being cheap. Can't give 5 minutes a day? 5 minutes a day? Like 6 minutes because of wudu. Right? For the 24 hours that I have, I can't give a little bit of time. Be real, that's stinginess. It's like if you gave someone everything. SubhanAllah, our parents sometimes they do so much for us that if they sometimes just call us, we're like, what do you need? Yes, I'm at your service. Because you understand the privilege that you've been given from them. And you're like, if it's the least I could do to answer your call and to bring in the groceries from the car or whatever, like some of our parents, right, they'll say that. They're like, this is all I'm asking from you. That's literally what Allah is doing when He says to pray 5 prayers. That's all I'm asking from you. You have your entire life. You have your entire day, just give me 5 prayers. You have your entire year, just fast Ramadan and give zakat. You have your entire life, just do 1 Hajj. He's not asking a lot. Right? So stinginess with God is one level. Okay? And the other one is stinginess with other people. And that could be financially or with time. You know, one of the things that we struggle with the most is being, Imam Sheikh Mikhail talked about this yesterday in Baltimore, is being present with people. Like being present. Like when I'm talking to you, I'm looking at you. I'm not like talking to you and I'm like, yeah, come on, I'm listening. Right? Yeah. What? Like, you know that awkward thing where like people like, and it's kind of like, it almost deflates any goodness that was between the two people. Like I'm trying to talk to you about something. And you're on Snapchat again? Right? Or you're on Instagram? Or you're responding to your like 9,000 WhatsApp thread? Is it that serious? Right? Being present with people. Don't be stingy with your time. If someone's talking, be present with them. And if you can't, that's okay. If you're consumed, that's okay. You know what you do? Give me a few minutes. Let me just take care of this. I'll be right back. If you can't do it that day, hey, I'm busy today. I'm really slammed. Let me call you tomorrow. Can't do it that week? Hey, this week doesn't look good for me. Let me hit you next week. Just be real instead of giving like the 20% effort. Right? This is stinginess with time. Okay? So Imam Mawlud says there's a couple of treatments for this. Number 1, realize that people who are wealthy, they spent their whole life trying to get it. And guess what? The poor person dies and the rich person dies. So he says if you're going to spend your whole life chasing wealth, if Allah gave it to you and somehow just landed in your lap, good for you. High five. MashaAllah. Donate to Roots. Okay? But if it's like going to be like a life mantra where it's like, I'm going to work hard, hustle every day, miss my prayers, do this, not be a part of a community, yada, 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 because I just want to get guap, then he's like, look, you're going to be buried next to the same person, the person who didn't have anything. Y'all are going to the same place. So he's like, I'm not telling you that you don't have to work, but he's saying you don't have to let it consume your life. Okay, and be stingy. The second thing he says is he says that also, one must also realize the level of disdain shown to misers. Everyone hates cheap people. And actually, I hate myself when I'm cheap. That's even more deep. Everyone hates cheap people, but when I'm cheap, I'm actually disgusted with myself. When I'm at a fundraiser, wallah, you know I feel it. When I'm at a fundraiser and I don't donate, I walk out shameful. 100%. I was at a fundraiser last week. They asked for donations. In my heart, I was yearning to give. They were like, who wants to give this much? And I was like, do it, AbdelRahman. Do it. And then I just couldn't do it. I pushed. And I'm being real with you. I don't talk about this. I don't like go home and like, hey, I didn't donate today, right? I tried to donate here and there. I was pushing, right? Sometimes your nefs just has you. And I walked out. Like literally the person I was at the table, they asked, are you okay? Because I was really upset with myself. Right? And so, inshallah, able to go back and donate to that organization and right the wrong that I had. But more than ever, people don't like stingy people. Don't like yourself when you're stingy. Be disappointed. Just like you're disappointed in the bad grade. Just like you're disappointed in being late. Just like whatever. Well, you know, some of us aren't. But just like you're disappointed when you do something that you know you can do better. Tell yourself, I'm not happy with myself today. I got mad when that person I was with ordered a drink instead of getting water. And I covered it. And I was like, what? Right? I'm upset with myself today. The last thing I'll share is this. So he actually said, those are the 2 treatments. There's one thing Imam Ghazali says, and I'll share it because we're going to wrap up. It's 9:07. He says that one time Jesus, alayhi salam, was being asked by his companions, his disciples. They said to him, why is it that you can walk on water and we can't? I mean, imagine like you see your prophet walk on water, you're like, right? Like, so they were like, they literally said, مَا لَكَ تَمْشِي عَلَى الْمَاءِ وَلَا نُقَدِّرُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. Like, why can you do that and we can't do it? Literally translation, why is it for you that you can walk upon the water, but it is not capable upon us for that? Right? He says, فَقَالَ لَهُمْ. He says to them, what is your opinion? Listen to this question. He goes, what's your opinion on gold and silver? What do you think about those two things? And they were just like, they said, Husnatan, they're great. They're awesome. Like, gold and silver? Like, who wouldn't want gold and silver? He goes, Lakin huma indi. He goes, actually, those two things to me, the difference between them and mud is nothing. I'm not obsessed with money like you guys are. Dirt and money to me are the same. One of Shaykh Abdul Nasir's teachers, he said that your iman is based upon the belief that everything around us, no matter how pretty and shiny it is all dust at the end of the day. And your conviction in that belief is directly related to your level of faith. He's not saying, give it all up and go live in the streets. What he's saying is, like Shaykh Hamza Yusuf beautifully said, let the dunya exist here, but don't let it exist here.